Good evening and welcome back to Paranormal M. Help us work the algorithm by dropping a comment below, respond to stories, or leave your own 6 cents on the matter. Your narrator enjoys reading your comments, good or bad. Get ready for a journey of awe and wonder. Roundabout Ghost. This happened only like an hour ago. So I'm a graveyard manager at a casino in my small town. Right outside the casino, there's a roundabout, and it's had several accidents over the 2 years it's been here. We've been pretty dead tonight due to a thick fog, so I went out to check the parking lot and get a bit of fresh air. As I was getting ready to go back, I looked out the roundabout and I saw someone standing in the centerpiece of the roundabout staring up at the road in the neighboring town. I thought that this was odd as it's like 2 a.m. and foggier than Silent Hill. So I called out to the person to see if they were in trouble. Got no response. I then looked at my phone for like half a second, and when I looked up, they were just gone. This kind of weirded me out a bit, as there's no way they could just disappear at that point, as even with the fog, I could make out the body and clothes, but looking back on it, I never did see a face. Just last summer, we had an accident where a trucker lost control of his rig and came barreling down the same road the figure was staring at, and ended up killing 2 people in a car in the roundabout. So I'm wondering if there's a connection there. The little casino I work at is haunted. I work grave shift at a little casino in a small town, and everyone's had something spooky happen at one point. It's pretty common to hear your name called, both the staff and the guest have it happen. It's kind of unnerving during grave, when you only have one other person working and almost no guests. We call the ghost Charlie, and he's pretty peaceful, calling names and sometimes screwing with the bathroom doors. Recently, though, it feels like something else is there, and I see shadow people darting around the machine sometimes. It gets pretty cold when this happens, and it feels different from Charlie, so I doubt this is him. It is possible for another ghost to just show up, and I have a lot of paranormal stuff happen in my life, but this just started like a month ago with the shadow people. Anyway, I just wanted to share this and see if anyone had any insight or had any other workplace ghost stories. One of my many encounters. This one is mild. In 3rd grade, I went to the Whaley House, which is considered the most haunted place in America. I had no idea it was haunted otherwise. I'd never have gone. Been quote-unquote sick that day or whatever, you know. So I pointed at a woman tending the garden. She was on the more pale side, and I thought I could almost see through her. I wondered why that was. I raised my hand and I said, "Is she okay? She looks kind of sick." The teacher said, "Stop playing games." I said, "I'm serious. She's right there, working on her garden." My mother said if I read about it, I wouldn't have come. Then asked if I was messing around, and I said no. My teacher accused me of stirring up trouble and sarcastically asked what she looked like. The tour guide's face went white. They asked if I'd been there or read anything. I said, "No, why is everybody being mean to me?" I had described Anna Whaley to a T, who was sometimes seen tending her garden. I fucking lost it and burst into tears as the teacher reprimanded me for sort of hurting the other kids. My mom was there and grabbed my hand and said that she believed me and that I needed to leave. My mom was a chaperone, so she called my dad, who rushed over while the kids were with the teacher, and she brought me one of those swirly rainbow lollipops. It is terrifying to be yelled at by a teacher, as well as being told you see something scary. I applaud my parents for backing me up. And who the fuck takes 3rd graders to the Whaley House? A few of my more minor experiences, I have too many to count. The other day I was playing Dungeons & Dragons. I was rolling for a saving throw so my character wouldn't die. Right as I was about to say, I failed it. My dice that had just stopped rolling for 30 seconds rolled over to the side. From I think like 9, it just barely failed. It rolled to 15. My DM thought I was fucking around. Safe bet, to be honest. Then I saw my reaction over Discord, so I saved and we won, still dumbfounded. I was cooking something and the oven fan turned on randomly. I was like, hey, kinda coming in clutch, you know? Then something pushed my laptop and a bunch of magazines really hard off the counter and threw a teapot across the room. I was like, oh shit, I need some sleep. Until my mom asked me why I didn't clean up from the night before and why the tea kettle was in the middle of the living room. This one is the big boy, the most unsettling. It used to be every night, but now not as much. I'm asleep. When my door opens, the doorway is foggy and there's an orange and red light flashing in the background. In walks one of the best-looking men I've ever seen. He wore a simple but classy black three-piece suit. His black hair is slicked back. He has a fantastic face and ice blue, almost gray eyes. He walks in and I can't move. He stands over me just looking at me for a few seconds, before leaning down and kissing me on the head. Then he says, "I'll see you soon enough," before leaving and closing the door gently. In each of these situations, I've tried to find other reasons, and no, there aren't any. One of my many encounters with the paranormal. Today I was telling my friend about how on a school field trip outside of a haunted house, who the fuck takes third graders there, and about how I saw something like a woman or something. But I just remember being yelled at for seeing stuff that wasn't there and upsetting other children, quote unquote. For those listening, I believe this is the same post from the same person, but perhaps elsewhere. What my mom said was that there was a cemetery nearby that they wanted us to go into. I kept saying no because she wanted me to hold her hand and I didn't want to. They were like, who? And apparently the description looked like a child buried there that had died from some illness. I was losing it and getting in trouble. My teacher said I already read about it and wanted to make a fuss. My mom was there and said if she had read about it, she wouldn't have come. Fast forward probably like over a decade. I finally set foot in that cemetery. I immediately walk over to the tree in there, and it had names because that's fucked. As I was looking, I had my hands at my sides, and what felt like a little child's hand started holding my right hand. As stereotypical as it sounds, the hand was colder than the normal air. When it disappears, I turn to my right, and there's a child's grave, with flowers, candles, toys, a little girl. I realized today that she did end up holding my hand. They make good stories, but it's scary to have these interactions and see, feel, and hear stuff. Makes your blood run cold. Or maybe my mama just raised a bitch and it isn't that scary. I don't know what he is, but he definitely wasn't human. I work in retail, seen a lot of shit. There was this man that walked in and I got a chill and my chest tightened. I got frequent panic attacks, but it was different. He was bad news. Of course, he approaches me out of everybody else. The conversation went like this. Me trying not to throw up. "Hi, can I help you?" Him staring at me with a terrifying, huge smile. "I need help with my phone." Me. "Actually, all I can do is make you an appointment." So he says okay, and I make him an appointment. I hate working with him, and I want to run to the back. He is with his wife, who's normal, and I got good vibes from. "Lady, run." She could become a skeleton in his closet. He was evil. Still makes me nervous and feel like I'm being watched. I just freaked myself the fuck out. I tell him to have a nice day, and he said, "Thanks, you too." So I laughed and said I couldn't tell if he was being sarcastic. He looked me in the eyes. Eyes are literally the windows to the soul for me. I look in someone's eyes and I see their darkest secrets. Any emotions they felt in the past, their thought process, and sense past trauma. I know it sounds fucking insane. Also intentions. I thought it was normal, but when I found out it wasn't, and my grandma said I had the gift, I was like, no, I don't. That's not possible. I figured I was just really observant or something, but no. I say shit I had no way of knowing about strangers. I feel like they're lying despite feeling genuine shock from them. I don't guess numbers and shit, but I know what people have been through. Strangers. Once I look into their eyes. I got tested for schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders at least 5 times. They call it an active imagination, but it's accurate. Always more on than later if you got questions. Behind those eyes was evil and hate, nauseated me, gave me goosebumps and a shiver on a hot day. His smile got bigger and he said, "You know when you ask someone if they're being sarcastic, nice men like me get angry." I don't know how I was calm on the outside. That felt somehow like a threat. I said goodbye and walked calmly to the back of the store and then had a full-blown panic attack. They aren't uncommon, but I never had, customers be that blunt. I've only genuinely given a fuck about 2 of them in my entire time in retail, so this was a big deal. He scared the shit out of me. My manager sent me home because I kept throwing up, not like that was uncommon, as I was kind of bulimic, but never have I at work or in public bathrooms, as I'm a huge germaphobe. But before they had said a man asked for me, I refused to help him. Normally I'm trying to get a raise, and unless they make me feel unsafe, will try to help the customer. They sent my friend who's 6'3" and ripped and protective as fuck over me. He said he got really bad vibes too. He did the guy that gave me the tech help, but not on the same level. My friend who had just gotten off work saw me and he walked me in my car because I was not laughing or cracking jokes, but I was completely serious for once, and it scared him. I'm like the equivalent of the class clown in the store. I'm normally the comedic relief in tight situations, as the eye thing tells me how to make people feel certain emotions, like happiness and make them laugh. Bad ones as well, but I've rarely tapped into them. I'm depressed, so I want to keep others from feeling like me. At the same time, I have a general disdain for other people. I know, a weird combo. I care about other people, but I don't want to be around them or interact with them. Being around them is exhausting because whenever I look into somebody's eyes, it's like an insight check in D&D. I have no control over when to do it. It makes people think I'm not paying attention, but I can't pay attention and look somebody in the eyes. But I couldn't look away. I was stuck looking into those evil eyes. This was not just the average dislike I have for people. This man was bad fucking news. His smile seemed too big to me and was more menacing, like a dog baring. I don't know how it's spelled. I'm dyslexic. Yeah, baring its teeth at you. You spelled it right, ma'am. He didn't feel human. His wife was lovely and a sweetheart. She was normal and had a beautiful, genuine smile. She was oblivious to him. Can't explain it. Other people saw a normal smile and human eyes. But I know what I saw. His eyes looked normal, but were not human. His smile was too big. Haven't told anyone because it would freak the people that believe in this stuff out. Or they wouldn't believe me. I figure people on this sub would understand. I'm not sure what he is, but he sure as fuck isn't human. I hope his wife is okay. She was so sweet. The Glowing Lady A Boy and His Father. The story is about the glowing lady. When I was around 10 or 11, I stayed over at a friend's house and we were feeling a little bit rebellious, so we decided to go outside past midnight because we thought that was cool for some reason. Anyway, my friend and I left his house and went on to the open street in the neighborhood. And at the end of his street, there was this old house no one lived in for a long time. It just sat there pretty much the whole time I lived there. So we looked toward that house and we saw a lady in a white dress. And since it was so long ago, I can't really remember a lot of the details, but I do remember her glowing really bright like car headlights pointed at us. Since it was so bright, I couldn't see her face, but I knew it was a woman and that she had this dress on. She started coming towards us. So me and my friend, being kids, said to each other, "Run, she's gonna get us." We laughed it off and ran inside his house. And I got the idea to check out the window to see if she was still coming, and she was gone, and that was it. We just got on the PlayStation and forgot all about it. Now, years later, when I'm nearing 17 years old, me and my family go pay a visit to the old friends and the neighborhood. And when we reached the end of that street where the old house was, I jokingly said, "Nobody ever lives in that house." And my mom tells me, "Well, yeah, because people have told me a long time ago a woman that used to live there was having a wedding and her husband never showed up and left her. Then she came home, killed her kids in the bathroom, and killed herself." And everything clicked in my brain and I just froze. This second story is about a boy and his father. My mother has this friend, we'll call her Beth, that had all these stories about this guy and his son that she sees in her home from time to time. Nobody believes when she tells them that she's constantly telling my mom that she just wishes somebody else would see them. Anyway, she described both of them as wearing a plain white t-shirt and blue jeans. But the odd thing was, they both have no head, like it stops at their shoulders. But she said that she sees them, but they just stand still and look in her direction. She wakes up and sees them, or they'd just be vibing in her house, and she told my mom that they don't scare her, because they just stand there, and understandably, it was probably their home before hers. Moving along, one day a friend of Beth comes over for dinner. Beth tells her that she has to use the restroom, so she goes and takes care of that. And when she gets back to her friend on the couch, the friend says to Beth, "I thought your husband gets off in an hour." Beth says, "Well, he does." And the friend says, "Well, I just saw him walk to the back bedroom and I said hi, and he just kept walking and didn't answer me." Beth realizes what just happened, and she starts clapping out of excitement and asks, "What was he wearing?" And her friend says, "A white shirt and blue jeans." And Beth gets excited and says, "Yes, finally, somebody else finally saw him." Because she was starting to think maybe she was just going a little bit crazy. In conclusion, one day Beth finally says, "I'm tired of this. I understand you once lived here, but this is my house now and you can no longer stay here." And then she stopped seeing them. Unforeseen creatures. When I was 12 years old in about 2013, I moved to this old house, built in about the 1940s. No one had lived in this house in over 30 years, and it was the first fall I've seen at this house. I was taking trash out to our back porch, and from there I could see a tree line that's normally very green and hard to see through, but seeing how it's fall and the leaves are almost all fallen. As I walk out to take trash out, I look at the tree line, about 30 or 40 yards away, and I see 4 to 5 of these at least 7-foot-tall pure white humanoids with no faces. I stand there in awe, not knowing what to think. It honestly looks like they're talking with hand gestures, but I couldn't hear anything. Now that I think of it, I heard nothing at the time, no birds, bugs, or even trees moving with visibly moving branches. I screamed, "Hey!" to which the creatures became motionless, like a statue. Then I proceeded to ask, "Who are you?" To which I stand there for a second before the creatures dispersed. Now I could see far into the woods, and they all went their separate way, not even hearing a leaf or twig crack when they fled. They quote-unquote ran off so quick that it seemed like a blur. To be honest, after that I completely forgot about that experience, until later that night. As I said, I was young, and at this time my mom worked night shift, and wasn't there for when I screamed at these creatures. FYI, I lived on essentially farmland, but my neighbors could easily walk up my driveway in a matter of 2 to 3 minutes. So later that night around 9 p.m. I heard knocking on my back door, the one where it leads to the back porch where the creatures were. And I thought maybe my mom told the neighbors to check up on me, so I go check it out. I go to the back door, turn the back porch light on, and open it to where no one was there. Casually, I chalked it up to maybe one of my dogs hitting the door or something around it. Now, after this knocking kept coming from the door, and it was weird, because every time I rounded the door to where I could see the back door, the knocking stopped. Now, this happened a few more times every few minutes, ranging from when I turn my back from the door to when the moment I sit back on my bed, to just waiting 5 to 10 minutes before it happened again. After about an hour of this and increasing anxiety, I got fed up and I went outside to scream, "I don't know who you are, but you better stop." And to my surprise, it did for about 30 minutes. Then knocking came from around the house, on windows, doors, and walls from the outside, for about another 30 minutes. I was scared, curled in the corner of my bed. After the 30 minutes, there was one last bang beside my window that I felt like shook the house, and was shocked that the window didn't break from it. That was the end of it. Nothing for the rest of the 5 years I lived. At least, I lived there. The shocking part was the outside was old, as stated, and could honestly be broken with one good swing to the exterior. But where that final bang was, there was no sign of any impact. Honestly, I think that's what scared me the most. That this creature could full force shake my house and leave no damage. I lived in Tennessee, by the way, if this maybe helps figure out what this thing is. He was friendly. Many years ago, when I was 12, my parents got divorced, after I moved in with my mom into her new house. The house was bought from an elderly couple who couldn't live alone anymore due to the age and were sort of heading to a nursing home. At settlement, once all the paperwork was signed and T's crossed and I's dotted, the elderly couple casually brings up, "Just so you know, we think our son Daniel is still in the house and has never left." Now, it's unclear if he died in the house or just came back to stay with his elderly parents. My mom was totally sketched out by this. Fast forward a few weeks. The second floor was completely unfinished. My older brother was in trade high school at the time for a senior project, and his project was to frame out the second floor. One night, while there by himself, he was working with the bedroom door closed and his music speaker on, when he saw the handle do about a half turn and the door very slowly open about a quarter way. He ran out of the house and had my other brother come pick him up. This was the first experience. About 6 months later, he was in a bad car crash and was lucky to be alive. After many surgeries and time in the ICU, he was sent home to recover and was in bed and wheelchair for an additional 6 months with very limited movement. He and his friends have many stories of what sounded like silverware dropping into the metal kitchen sink, or a frisbee just rolling across the room, but nothing ever violent. Now for my experience. You need to know the basic layout of my house first. On the first floor, there were 2 hallways, and this formed a big L shape. My room was at the end of the short leg of the L, and the kitchen was at the end of the long leg of the L. Standing at the island in the kitchen gave you a perfect view directly down the long hallway to the intersection of where both hallways met. At that intersection was the bedroom door to my mom's room. There was also a pretty bright hall light at the intersection. One night, I was in a video game binge in my room. Honestly, I'd say 5 straight hours of playing without getting out of my chair, not even going to the bathroom. While playing, I saw something out of the corner of my eye in the intersection of the 2 hallways. It looked like a moving shadow and pretty tall. I looked over, and after a few seconds I dismissed it as being our cat. The height discrepancy didn't make sense, but I wasn't too worried. I started playing again, and a minute later I saw movement again. This time I stopped and looked a bit longer, focused on where I saw movement. Nothing. I go back to playing for a few minutes, and I can see movement again. No way this is my cat at this point, and this time I won't break my line of sight from the hallway. All of a sudden I hear my mom saying, Kyle, where are you going?" She comes walking down the long hallway from the kitchen and turns toward her room, but the door was closed, as she always left it. She looked confused, turned around, and surprisingly saw me sitting in the chair in my bedroom. She asked, "Did you just go into my room?" It's just so weird. We both saw the same shadow in the same spot at the same time. And over the next years, we had so many small, unexplained sounds, thumps, or out of the corner of our eye sightings. He was never violent, thankfully, or vocal, but it was always an ominous feeling. However, my mom was very unbothered by him and used to openly talk to him and just ask him how he was doing. I guess to be friendly with him. One day, my mom decided to try and help him. She said out loud, "Daniel, I'm going to where your parents went. If you want to see them, come with us in the car." We then got ready and got into the car. The nursing home where they went after they sold the house was only a 5-minute drive from our house. My mom announced every turn and road name. "I'm making a left onto so-and-so road." Turn by turn, she gave directions out loud, and when we got to the nursing home, she said, "This is where they are, but I don't know what room they're in." We waited a minute and headed back home. We never really saw anything definitive again. Please help. I think I saw a ghost. Today it was a sunny day. Around 15 to 16 hours, I was talking with my girlfriend. She was on the middle of the sofa with her phone on her hand watching Instagram. On the sofa's back, there's a wall, and on the sofa's right, there's another wall, but with a door. Out of nowhere on that door, I see many white thin smokes slowly moving from the left to the right for around 2 seconds until disappearing. I stop the conversation and in a serious way tell my girlfriend that there's a ghost on the door. She keeps looking at me, not taking me seriously. And then the white smoke comes back. I tell her to look, but this time it moves from the right to the left and lasts around 1 second. This is when she looks and it's not there anymore. It was like the smoke you see from incense, soft, thin, but in a large quantity. I thought maybe it was my girlfriend's phone, but its light wasn't hitting the door. I checked the lamps nearby, I checked the zone near the door and saw nothing. I even thought about spiderwebs, but none of these move. I'm scared, guys. This isn't my first paranormal situation. Around 7 years, I saw a huge white glowy aura moving slowly on my parents' room, more than 1 meter long, and my brain shut off until I realized what I'd seen. Guys, should I worry? Is this the right subreddit? Part of me is happy my girlfriend didn't see it. I'd rather think it was a hallucination than a ghost. Ask Reddit. When I moved out at 18, I got my first apartment with my ex. It was a relatively large complex and we were in the middle level. Lucky 13. We had just gotten married and we were having a lot of problems. I chalked it up to my rushing into one bad situation to avoid another. Long story. But there was something weird about the apartment that seemed to bring out the worst in us. We fought a lot, and my ex was both physically and mentally abusive. I was staying up during the night so we could spend time together and sleeping during the day when he was at work. Because we fought so much, many of these nights would be spent in the living room alone surfing the internet, while he would be in the bedroom playing games or sleeping. The layout of the apartment was like this. Slightly different. Oh, it says this, and this is a link, but I can't show you the link, so... Anyhow, moving on. Slightly different, but we didn't have as big of a back bathroom, but that's the same layout. We had a computer desk set up in the corner of the living room, and sitting at the desk meant your back was to the small T-shaped hallway leading to the back bathroom and spare bedroom. This is important. The back bathroom always gave me the creeps. I couldn't go back there without feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. There was a small built-in wall shelf behind the door in the back bathroom, and there was a hole in the wall that reminded me of Silent Hill, because every time I'd see that hole, it seemed to get bigger. During many of those nights when I'd be up along the computer, I'd be browsing the internet, reading things like creepypasta, watching movies, playing games. I've always been sensitive to supernatural things, scary stuff I can't explain, if you will. I've been so scared I was literally immobilized with fear before, and I've had visual hallucinations at night many times. There was one instance that really sticks out in my mind. I don't know if it was a dream, a hallucination, or what. I was sitting at my computer desk in the dead of night reading something. But it was like the point of view was switching between myself looking at the computer and that of like a dome camera in the corner of the room watching myself at the computer and the room behind me. I'm scrolling, then the point of view switches and I'm watching myself. I see myself scrolling and I've got my chin resting on my hand. I can see that I'm reading something. The entire room is in view behind me and I can see the kitchen and dining area behind me as well and the T-shaped hallway leading to the back bedroom and bathroom. I'm just watching myself. And then I see a shadowy figure drift up the hallway and stop behind me. That's literally just behind my left shoulder. I'm watching from the aerial point of view and I can see this figure's just resting there behind me, just over my shoulder, as if trying to read what's on my screen. It switches back to my point of view. I feel tense and cold. Then I get that weird feeling like something's watching me. Then go to turn around. The point of view switches back to aerial and I see the figure bolt down the hallway before I can turn around and see it. The point of view switches back to my own and I'm now aware of what just happened. I'm looking behind me, nothing's there. Just turned on all the lights in the house and then went to the master bedroom, locked the door and laid in bed. The next thing I remember is waking up the next morning when my ex went to work. It wasn't until after that we finally moved out that I told him about the experience, and he shared with me about how the apartment as a whole made him uncomfortable and just mad all the time for no reason. I still don't even know if what I remember was real or just some weird dream. I still get uncomfortable thinking about that apartment, all the weird shit that used to happen there. Ask Reddit. When I was younger, I used to take naps upstairs, but by the time I was 8 years old, I absolutely refused to go upstairs. The upstairs had 2 large closets or attics. They ran from one side of the upstairs all the way to the other side on both sides. It was essentially a crawl space that was maybe 30 feet long. It started one day when a friend and I went crawling from one side to the other with flashlights, like kids normally do. Then I saw a girl sitting there in the corner acting like she wanted to play with us. I know a lot of people say when they see a ghost they aren't scared, just interested, but nope, I was beyond terrified. This girl looked normal, had blonde hair and nice dress and seemed friendly. I stayed silent, kept crawling behind my friend and got out of the closet. Told him what I saw in there. He said he didn't see it, but felt like he didn't want to go back in. Then my parents would occasionally send me upstairs to get something. And when I would go up there, I would see the doors swing open, as if they were trying to get me to come inside. I would lose toys and wouldn't be able to find them anywhere. Suddenly, my parents would be fishing out Christmas presents out of the attic, and we would find some of my toys in there. I remember being 8 years old. My parents are asleep still in the morning, and I leashed up my dog to go take on the monster in the attic. My dog, usually up for anything, refused to go off to the top step into the attic. My parents never believed me with all the weird things that happened in that house. I would get blamed for things that happened all over the house, leaving lights on, toys all over, things I knew I didn't do. Well, anyway, we moved out of there when I'm 10. Not a week passes before the new owner calls us up and asks if the house is haunted. Their daughter sleeps upstairs, and she says that she's been playing with a blonde-haired girl at night. My parents laughed at how crazy these new homeowners must be. To make an already long story short, the girl started appearing in other parts of the house for them. They kept in contact. They would look over while watching TV and see the girl sitting on their daughter's lap. They looked up on the computer the past owners of the house, found an old dressmaker that lived there, and yep, a picture of the little girl wearing one of the ladies' dresses. The family that moved in there were absolutely torn apart by the events. Got divorced, Dad stayed living in the house and ended up taking his own life in that house. The guy who died at the convenience store. I started working there in the 90s. Shortly before that, the owner's son was working, and a man rushed in to ask for a knife. He'd been in a car accident, and his girlfriend couldn't get her seatbelt off. Owner's son turned around to grab the bagel knife, and by the time he turned back, the dude was dead on the floor. His seatbelt had done something to his esophagus, crushed it, I believe. And while adrenaline helped, he suffocated and died right there at the register. I did not know this when I started working there. I found out after I asked about the things I was experiencing. Bird, you're sounding like a car backing up. I found out after I asked the things that I was experiencing, and I'd get kicked or poked in the leg or shoulder while nobody was behind me. I'd walk through cold patches that moved throughout the store, see the reflection of someone in the cooler door but turn to see nobody there. Felt like I was being watched while I was in the cooler filling sodas. But the knife, the bagel knife, while working by myself on camera with nobody else there, that knife would be gone the minute I turned around, and then I'd find it back a bit later, maybe somewhere else. The other staff said similar things were happening to them. The overnight shift was one person, and often the store was empty. The people who worked that shift heard whistling sometimes, but mostly they heard crying. Turns out the girlfriend was a teacher at my high school. Started talking to him while I worked. I let him know that she was okay, she survived, and he can let it go. And things started to calm down. I stopped getting poked. The knife stayed where I left it. Definitely the most intense experience I've ever had. My brother died in jail. Trigger warning for drug use. Noted. My brother was in solitary while in jail. He had a dental visit with the jail nurse, and he was awaiting trial on misdemeanor marijuana charges, and he was 25. He was someone with no concept of consequences, and he absolutely hated authority. When he went to prison at 18, he was told to clean the bathroom. He put the sponges on his hands and knees and just sort of crawled around just to irritate the corrections officers. I was in high school while he was in prison, and he wrote me a letter. If I died, would Les Max cry? I hope so. That his teachers would ask where the students saw themselves in 10 years, he said, I don't see myself in 10 years. His parole didn't go well, so he finished his 5 years. It was just a multitude of misdemeanors. Then he got a job and happily worked double shifts at a gas station. They loved his work ethic. When the guy he was living with got a girlfriend, she wanted my brother out, so he found some greaseball to live with. Then the drug bust came, and my brother was caught up in it over marijuana. As he was awaiting his appearance before the court, he had his dental visit, and he'd been caught making hooch in his cell. He was put into the only cell with no camera. When you're in solitary, you get 1 hour a day to shower and clean your cell, under supervision. If you need something like shampoo, you submit a written request. If you're lucky, you get it, eventually. He was known for whistling, tapping, and drumming while in a solitary cell. 11:20 p.m., he asks for the aerosol cleaner. A corrections officer gave it to him. His rig was a rag with a toilet paper holder, and he'd written on his clothes, "You should delete yourself," as a message to the corrections officers because he despised them so much. Around 2 a.m., the aerosol can hit the floor, and the guy in the cell next door started yelling for help. He was dead already, but they called my mother to tell him that he was in critical condition at the hospital. He was on a gurney in the hallway, covered by a sheet. She just was called to identify his body. The officer who gave him the cleaner was not reprimanded, but when they mailed his stuff to us, they included the rag in the toilet paper holder. They offered to send us the video of them dragging him out of his cell and doing CPR. A friend's husband started working at that jail as a corrections officer. He said, every night the same whistling, tapping, and drumming kept happening. Everybody heard it. People would ask, "Who's that blonde guy walking around?" Several years after his death, his driver's license was found on the floor of the correction officer's storage room. I started finding pennies right away after he died. I was having dreams where I told him, "You died." He didn't believe me. Then eventually they changed. I'd be excited to see him, and then I'd say goodbye again, and finally in a dream he told me he was ready to go. I still mourn, and this was over 20 years ago, but I'm still mourning, and occasionally I still find pennies. Got a good ghost story? I love a good ghost story. Let's hear yours. I've got a few, but here's a moderate one from a few years ago. I was staying at my buddy's house in Massachusetts. Right near our house is a famous old abandoned mental hospital. Naturally, we went trespassing in daylight to check it out. There were lots of buildings on this site. It was like a whole campus. Of course, the buildings were falling apart and boarded up and covered in spray paint. Some windows were boarded up, some had glass still. Some were just giant cutouts where the windows used to be. Some windows had been milky white, thick plastic coverings too. Anyway, we went upstairs, and this one building, we saw old beds and hospital-like equipment. Then we went back down the stairs to the exit, and we went to go explore the rest of the campus. My friend was walking in front of me, and her friend was behind me. It was just us 3 girls walking in a line, and I was in the middle. We were walking against the building that we were just in, about 1 foot or 2 from beside the building, and it's an empty window. It's just basically all empty window openings, rather. The first 2 windows were openings in the walls. They were not covered, but you could see through into the building. But the 3rd window was shielded in white, mostly opaque plastic wrap. My friend walked by first. Nothing unusual occurred, though. But as I was passing by the window, a forceful finger came through from behind the plastic wrap to poke me in the face. It didn't make full contact. However, it came close, about 1 inch or 2 from my cheek. And oh yes, one could audibly hear the plastic getting manipulated while the poke was in contact with it. All I said was, "Whoa," and the girl behind me witnessed it. She said, "I saw that." craziest thing to ever happen to me, and I live in Baltimore. So living in Baltimore, there's a place called Loch Raven Reservoir, and it's out in the sticks. Quick to get to, though. Baltimore's kind of weird like that. 10 minutes one way, woods, then next the ghetto. So we would drive out to Loch Raven and smoke while driving the empty country roads. Well, on those roads is a turnoff to a park. Been a while, but I'm kind of sure it's Cromwell Park. And it's not the kind of park you think. It's more just woods with trails, and you can only get there by driving. Roads way too small and dangerous to walk. Well, me and my friend went there one night to smoke. It was about 1 a.m. and we parked in the parking lot, which again is just a few spots for cars made from gravel. In front, behind, and to the right are trees leading to nothing but more woods. To the left, I'm driving by the way, it's a field. The field goes a little more than a football field, and I would say maybe a football field wide, till you guessed it, more trees. Yes, very good. So we have a CD case, and I was breaking the bud up and while my friend prepared the blunt. It's pretty dark out except for some moon and starlight shining, and I just look to my left, and on the edge of the field where the trees start, I see what appears to be someone with a flashlight. It's far away, so I'm not worried about it, and just say something to my friend like, "What the fuck is somebody doing in the woods all the way out here at this time?" I continue breaking up the bud, and when I'm done, I pass it over to my friend, and he dumps it in the blunt roll and kind of just lays the CD in the dash. While I'm waiting, I look up to my left again, and now the lights are up in a tree. Not real high, just a few feet, so I comment again. Why the fuck is somebody climbing trees at this time in the middle of nowhere? He's just like, if I know. Then he starts to hear some pops going off. Now I'm like, okay, he's lighting fireworks off. So weird. The pops keep happening more and more. I had no idea that all hell was about to break loose. I'm looking over there and a flash of light turns off and the pops keep going. For some reason I had thought that, and when I thought, or rather, for some reason I had a thought, and when I thought, it was my stomach. Got that scared feeling. Sorry, the writing's crazy. I got that scared feeling and I said out loud to my friend, getting goosebumps thinking about this, why can't we see fireworks going off? At that exact moment, the explosion got super loud and traveled across the field towards us, like a string of explosions coming right at us. It made it across the field in probably 3 or 4 seconds. The car was engulfed in explosions. I could feel them in my guts like fireworks do. The CD case vibrates off the dash and they're going off like crazy. My friend, who's been through some stuff in his life, his mom stabbed his dad up in his sleep while he was in the room next to a 13-year-old, so he's not easy to scare. He's in tears, freaking out, begging me to leave, absolutely pleading. I'm saying, no, I want to know what the fuck is happening. I turned my car back on because I felt bad for this clown in tears and was going to leave. But it all stopped as soon as the car turned on. I remember him saying it sounded like a stampede of horses going around the car. The area had fights from the Revolutionary War and redcoats and bluecoats in that area. It was known for being sympathetic to the redcoats and battles being fought in the area. Can't say that's what it was, if it was a ghost or what, just saying that's what came to mind. I emailed the park 10 or so years later and asked if anyone has ever said anything about anything paranormal to them before. They said no, not one thing ever. To this day I'm left perplexed at what the fuck happened that night. It's mind-blowing. I thought only movies had this kind of stuff, but since then I'm way more open-minded. I still believe a lot of people lie and are just crazy. I hear stories on here where you think, bro, come on, you're full of it, or you need help. But this is what happened to me, believe it or not, and I don't care. But it's the only thing to happen to me. Felt the urge to tell someone. paranormal event while watching Paranormal Activity. When Paranormal Activity first came out on DVD, I watched it at my friend's apartment. She lived in an independent living portion of an orphanage. I've always loved ghost and haunting movies, and that one really freaked me out. But the freakiest part happened at the end of the movie. I was pretty unnerved by the end of the movie, and after the end scene, the credits started to roll. However, they were not normal credits that you can read. The names were flying by so quickly on the screen that they are just kind of a blur. My friend and I thought that was really strange, so she paused it so we could read the names. When she paused it, the screen showed a ton of tiny names, like 200 of them, and every single name was my first name with a different last name. My blood ran cold and I got chills all over. I could think of no rational explanation for why every single name on the screen was my own. Surely there couldn't have been 200 of my name working on this film. And for all the names to be grouped together instead of separated by their role on the film, it was strange. When we pressed play again, all of a sudden the credits were rolling normally. I've watched the movie since then, and the credits were normal. Happened just that one time. Needless to say, I stayed at her apartment that night, because I did not want to be alone. Felt like some entity was singing, just kind of singling me out. I was pretty freaked out and feeling on edge. Later on, I hear stories about how the orphanage she was staying at was haunted. Met my guardian angel. I was raised Christian, but somewhere along the way I decided I couldn't buy into it without real evidence. It all seemed very suspect, that we were just supposed to believe because of faith. So I considered myself agnostic. I couldn't presume to know either way if God or paranormal things existed, so I didn't really think about it and went on with life. Anyway, that's the mind frame I was at 19 years old, when I went to a rave with my boyfriend at the time. I had been drinking, and we had an argument that pissed me off, so I went to sit in the car by myself until he was ready to leave. I was aware of my surroundings and I didn't pass out. I had never drank to the point of blacking out ever. I sat in the passenger seat and remembered the CD I was playing. I hadn't been sitting there long when my passenger door opened and someone crouched down and put their hand on my leg. What struck me is that I didn't feel threatened at all. This person didn't knock first, just opened the door and bent down to touch me like they knew me and knew I wouldn't be afraid. When I looked at this person, I got the impression it was a female, but then I wasn't sure. Maybe it was a feminine male. It was unclear. They looked androgynous with short, dark hair, and even though I was looking directly into their face, I can't remember any of their features. I just get the impression of a light figure dressed in dark clothes with dark hair, but a peaceful presence. I wasn't scared. They said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Who are you?" "Did my boyfriend send you?" And they said, "No, he didn't. My name's Star. I don't know how to go about explaining who I am." I said, "Okay, well, can you try?" They said, "No, I just came to check on you if you're okay. I must be going now." I asked them to stay, but they shook their head and said that they had to go. At this point, I had to come to think I was speaking to a woman. So she closed the door, and I watched her walk off in the rearview mirror. A little while later, my boyfriend gets in the car. I asked him, did he send that woman to check on me? He asked who I was talking about. I explained the interaction, and he said that he'd been watching the car the entire time as I was sitting in it, and nobody came to the car. In fact, the doors were locked, and he had to unlock them to get in. He was shocked because the experience had seemed so visceral and real. He was raised Catholic and told me that angels were often described as featureless and androgynous the way I had described them. Like looking into a bright light, but it didn't hurt my eyes. I scoffed at first, but then realized I had no better explanation. Ever since that night, I've been convinced I met my guardian angel. I know how crazy that sounds, but it was so real and I don't know how to explain it otherwise. I'm positive I didn't black out. Has anyone had a similar experience? Stars dancing in the sky. A few nights ago, I was out late at night with my family and some friends. It's really smoky out, and I looked up and noticed a relatively bright star in the sky, about like Vega in brightness. I'm into astronomy, so I looked at it for a while, trying to see if I could identify it with my star app on my cell phone. And that's when I noticed a couple of odd things. The star was moving, not in a straight line like a satellite or an airplane. It was staying in its same little patch of sky, but it was moving in a random pattern and at random speeds. Sometimes very slow, sometimes it would stop, sometimes it would shoot very fast. It wasn't wiggling a little bit like atmospheric distortion. It was moving a significant distance. I pointed it out to the people I was with, and we all agreed that we saw it move. Also, it wasn't appearing on my star map. The other people I were with identified 3 additional lights doing the same thing. Also in the sky, there were normal stars that weren't moving and not as bright. After watching for a good long time, I realized that they were also pulsing light seemingly at random. It would flash slightly and illuminate the clouds around it, so it was inside the clouds. Sometimes only a quarter would flash. Sometimes it would light up the clouds around it all the way around. I watched them for about an hour until it was time to leave, and then drove an hour away. They weren't in the sky at my house, only at the location we originally saw them. This is the second time I've seen something like this, but this is the first time that I had a whole crowd with me to acknowledge what I was seeing and watch with me. I think I have a cursed rock. Me and my girlfriend love going to castles and exploring. We live in the UK and had an English heritage pass, so we'd go to a few castles when we could. June or July last year, we go and visit Beeston Castle. It's a fantastic castle on a hill, and there's a whole knights tournament taking place. We sat on a wall at the bottom of the hill and noticed a rock was loose. My girlfriend laughs and says that we should put it in our pocket as a memento. I had cargo shorts on, so laughed about it and put it in the pocket where I forgot about it. Until we got home. We had a lovely day until we leave. She starts to feel unwell, and on the way was sick, so I had to pull over. She has a rough week before going to the doctors and finding out her kidneys are failing. This was an issue that she suffered with in the past, but for over a year had no issues. She made a recovery after about a month. We went on holiday in September, and while away, my granddad had a fall and banged his head. He healed up before I returned, but has bad knees and needs surgery, which keeps getting pushed back. My car broke in October and was taken off the road as the engine broke and couldn't be reasonably replaced. Still without a car, having to borrow my mom's until I couldn't afford a new one. November comes and my girlfriend's mom, who has a number of long-term health conditions, gets sepsis and is in the hospital where she nearly dies, and a DNR is placed on her by the doctor. She does come out after making a recovery, but has had several more stints in the hospital through this year. Each one of them, she has a time where she can't breathe and is close to death. My nan has had cancer for a while and finishes her radiotherapy in December. All seems to go fine, but is told near Christmas that it didn't work out and the cancer is basically now all over the body. She's still fighting and on medication, but it seems nothing will clear the cancer. January, and our cat gets hit by a car and dies. We had him less than 12 months. February, and my girlfriend's grandma is unwell and dies on Valentine's Day. March and April, our dog gets unwell and has to be put down. May and June, her nan is unwell with cancer and dies after a short battle. July, my mom is now unwell and her muscles wearing away after drastically losing weight and not being able to eat much. She's been diagnosed with liver thrombosis, but having loads of tests to see what else. She has a lot of falls, can't make it upstairs all the time, and needs a bit of care, which my dad struggles with as he has spinal problems. Also, my granddad is admitted to the hospital as he has a long-term blood infection. He has no idea how he got it. This is prolonging his surgery again, and this morning my mom's car goes in for a service, an MOT, and it fails with the timing belt needing replacing. They haven't gotten one, so it could be weeks. I need transport for work, so trying to arrange a courtesy car. We also are waiting for money for my girlfriend's grandma's house sale to come through, as we're going to be given some money for a car, but last night we were told this too is delayed. That sounds like a series of more than bad luck, sir.